And hello again, this is Philip Steiger at thebest3d.com, and I'm going to start a series here of small tutorials to introduce a 3D program that can prove to be very useful as a companion to Project Dogwaffle. In this case, this program is called Animator, and it's actually a free program. You may have seen some reference to it on our website. Right here, or if you scroll down to the bottom where you'll see the 3D tools, when you go there, you'll see some reference to a couple of really great programs, many of them free or totally affordable. And one of them is called Animator, as in anim8or. And when you click on that, you'll get some basic information, some great examples of animations that were done, tutorials, in particular some tutorials here by sort of a tutorial course by Ian Ross, and some other tutorials we found, and we will be adding our own tutorials here as well. So Animator is something that was created a couple of years ago, actually already quite a while ago, by Steve Glanville, and it's still under development. Every once in a while some updates, and we always hope for some other wow effects every time you look at it. So if you go to the website animator.com, you'll see there's a lot of really good information, movies, galleries, examples. There's a full manual. It's a really great way to kind of discover 3D and build some stuff and have fun discovering something in a yet another dimension. And perhaps find some ways that you can use that together with Project Dogwaffle as well. In fact, we will cover a couple of ways that you can use the 3D in conjunction with something that you do in Dogwaffle. For instance, you might want to use Dogwaffle to create a texture, to paint some textures that you then map onto the surfaces of the objects. And you will see some tutorials here already that show a variety of things you can do. And some of that might be texturing, or for instance how to render into cartoon modes. There will be lots of other tutorials that we will be showing similar to this and beyond. There's character animation, there is all sorts of robotics, mechanical design. There's really some good stuff, and if you have a good high-end 3D graphics card on your PC, all the better. This is a program that's not only free, but it's being created by somebody who's really an enthusiast for 3D, and so let's go dive into this a little bit and explore how we can use that. So I'm going to launch the program. It's already launched here actually, and to give you an idea of one thing we'll do in this tutorial is to focus on selecting an object, creating an object, actually something similar to this or maybe less complex, but something that we will use as a brush, that we will in fact animate, maybe do a little animation like so, and then turn this into an animated brush and load that simply as an AVI file, load that straight into Dogwaffle to paint with it while it's animating through that sequence. So the thing with Animator is that it has a couple of modes that you see here. When you start the program, in fact, let's go start this. Let's close this. Let's not save it. This was done so quickly, we can redo something similar or better. Let's go and create a new one. When you start it, initially you'll see something like this. In fact, you don't see it right away. Give it a second or two and it will initialize to an empty scene. Look at the view menu, and you can see different views: a perspective view, orthographic, a couple of front side top views, and so on. You can see them all, well, most of them, the important ones. You can see 4 of them at the same time. And you can switch which one is which. You can click on the menu here, front, say, no, I want that to be the bottom view. I want this one, the top, to be the front, because I like to work on this side. So you can arrange this the way you want. And then if at any time you want one of them, just only one of them, you can select the view one, or one view. So you see just the front here. And here's the center of the universe that you're working on. Now, there are several phases you're going to go through. There is the phase where you build the models. So the mode is important to understand. Is you have a mode, and depending on which mode you're in, you'll see different tools and also different content in the menu. So for instance, when you're in the mode where you build objects, the build menu will have all sorts of tools to convert shapes from other shapes, and to create other stuff, to build some primitives here, very detailed stuff, modify existing material, all sorts of basic construction tools, right? But then when you switch to like the figure design or the sequence, or for instance the scene, you put everything into the scene. Well, here it's not going to let you build those shapes anymore, but it's going to let you add them to the scene. So you can, whatever you've created so far, you can add an object, you can add figures. If you've made sequences that move, like pistons in an engine that are animated, or wheels that are turning, or even a walk sequence for a character, you can have those sequences put into the scene. You can add lights and cameras and basically assemble your scene. So that is a different type of build than what you see here when you go to the mode that lets you build the basic shapes. So we'll do that. We'll go today, create an object and then put that into the scene and do a little animation on that. Let's see what it takes. So first of all, let's go to the mode, which is the object mode. And one thing to notice also is that you won't see tooltips pop up here, but you'll see one at the bottom. Keep an eye on this lower left corner, and as I move from one cursor to the other, or from one icon to the other, it will switch the tooltip and also show you the shortcut. That's really important. Here is Shift M or uppercase M. Here is Shift S, uppercase S. There's a couple of others here for the manipulation. A for, I guess, all or something, always. Arrow, there you go. This one here, D for draw or diagonal selection. This one, M for move, rotate, R. Yep. All right. So first thing we'll do is we'll create a shape. There are some basic shapes. We'll take this one here. This one is add primitive mesh. All right, so I'll select this one and then just click and drag from the center roughly here. Click and drag and you'll see that basic shape. Now you may see it in flat shaded like this with the outlines, the black lines around it, if indeed your view mode shows flat. But you can do wire and then you'll see it kind of transparent with the wire frame, or you can also see it in smooth shaded. This one though has sharp angles and it's not supposed to be smooth shaded. We can actually double click that and change it. If you want the smooth angle here to be much higher, it will actually start smoothing it. That looks a bit ugly because it's very faceted, very few big facets. We will keep it low here. Let's keep it at about 33, and so we get we keep a smooth, flat shaded look here, an appearance that's flat shaded. By the way, this selection here that you see on the outside, you need this arrow for that. So this arrow, if you click on the outside, you have not selected it, right? So you can click it, and that allows you to select it. And you can also click multiples. If you have another object like this one here, and you put a sphere over here, right? Now you have two. You can select this one or this one. And if you want to select them both, you simply right-click the other one. All right, so click here outside to deselect everything. Control A will usually allow you to select everything. That's one of the shortcuts in the edit menu usually. And there's all sorts of other tools to like select an inversion, also some facet selection related. But you can select multiples. You can select one and then select the next one. If you right-click, it will select. It will add to the selection. All right, so this little side thing, let's delete this one. I'm just going to hit the delete key after selecting the sphere. And let's go back to this one, selecting it. And now what I'd like to do is really select each of the facets individually. So for that, you go to this icon here. Okay, so here we have the selection of the object altogether. Here we have sort of viewing controls. We'll get to that a little bit later. But here, this one, you can see the tooltip in the bottom says Object Point Edit. So you need to select that if you want to select the different facets. And now you can actually click on here, the selection tool, the arrow, and this allows you to select individual facets. So what can you do with that? Well, for instance, one thing you could do is use this tool, which is the extrusion, the extrude faces, and you can extrude that face one way or the other. And when you go to the other way, you'll notice that it will show in blue. This facet will show in blue if it's inverted to the other side. We'll see that, for instance, if we select facets. How do we select them all? All right, let me do Control Z to undo this, and then Control A to select them all. Right, that's one way to do that. Another way would be to use the marquee, the rectangular marquee selection, and select them all like this. All right, so once I have got that selection, we can do the extrusion like so. this way. Everything is being selected, everything is being extruded. If we extrude this way, you see them break through from the back, and that's where the blue shows. But let's go this way, and let's zoom out a little bit. So we need the view tool here to make it a little bit smaller on the view. There you go. Let's drag this down. We're going to extrude this quite a bit. So let's go back to the facet selection where we have the extrusion. Next thing we'll do is we'll make the facets a little bit smaller, each of them. So here's a selection that's the scale faces, where we can scale up or down what the size of these faces is, and we'll go to about this much, and we'll also rotate them. There is a rotate faces, Shift R if you want to use the shortcut, and I'll rotate them a little bit here. Isn't that neat? Look at that, each of these facets rotating around their respective center, and I'll go like so, and then I'll do another extrusion. All right, so this one I'll go a little bit like this and scale them down a little bit like so. Shift R for rotation, right? And what was the shortcut for the facet extrusion? That's Shift X or uppercase X. There you go. And then Shift R for more rotation, Shift S for scale size. Oh no, what was that? Oops, I need to undo that to go back to that selection. Shift S for scale. No, I got the wrong one here. That wasn't the right one. There you go. All right, so let's do this. Let's make him a little bit bigger again here, and then go back to extrusion one more time, and finish it like so. All right, so this one actually is going to bring it to a tip here. Now I want everything to look a little bit more organic, so what I'll do is I'll go back to the selection of the entire shape. Make sure it's selected, and then under the build menu you can see subdivide faces. So with that you can click OK and do that maybe 2 or 3 times. In fact, in the view mode, let's see it flat so you see how many facets you actually have. Still not too many. Let's go one more time. OK, and there you go. Now I want that to be smooth shaded, so I'm going to go to the view menu again and smooth it. Now some parts might still see some creasing here, and so what I'm going to do is double click it and increase that smooth angle, let's say 66. That's probably going to be good enough. Yep, okay. So now I can rotate this part. Select this and rotate it, right? So this is a shape I've just created, and I'd like to use this in my brush as a custom brush image. I can go and render that. Render image, and select the size and background and so on, but I don't want to do that on just this one part. I want to render the entire shape. The entire an animation, multiple frames. So I'll actually do a render of the animation. Now I need to define what the animation is first, right? So that is where we go from the object definition to a sequence or a scene. All right, so what I'll do is I'll switch over to the scene, and in fact I'll go to the front, from the front to the perspective view, and even better to the camera view. I want to see what the camera sees. But before that we need to put something into the scene, so we have actually something that the camera can see. So how do we do that? We've created an object under the object mode, and we can now, while we are in the scene mode, we can build stuff into that scene. We can add an object like the one we've created. All right, so object 1 was the name. We didn't name it, we didn't change its name yet. That'll be for a different tutorial. So okay, that here it is. Whoa, super big. So one thing we'll need to do is make it smaller or move back, see it from a little bit farther distance. So one thing you can do is you can move around into the scene, or you can move the object around. Left button allows you to move it sideways and up and down, and right button allows you to move it to the back. But now it's disappearing into the ground. So we probably want to do without the ground anyway, because we'll want to render this without the grid on the bottom. So what we'll do is we'll look for the render settings here. Settings for probably the environment. The environment will have a background color. There it is. And there it is, the ground grid. Let's get rid of that and okay that. So the grid is gone. Oh, and while we're at it, let's go back and also change the settings environment for the color. I want the color to be blue in the background, or green. So we can do some green screen or blue screen keying, so that we can basically key transparency to that. Now it won't show in the preview, but during rendering, let's do a quick test on that. Render this one image. You'll see that it's rendering to the blue color. All right, let's close out of that render mode, and see what else we need to do. It's not centered. Let's move it up a little bit. Let's select it and move it up. Move it still a little bit further back, and right click and drag with the right button so it's a little bit in the back there. Right, now we could also rotate it, yep. And wouldn't it be nice if we could actually have it remember one angle of rotation and then animate to another angle of rotation? Well, we can. This is actually one of the things that makes this name not just a modeler but a animator. It's an animation program as well. So what we can do is we went to the object mode and now we are in the scene mode, and there, amongst other places, we can create animations. And what you can see down here, let's go to the scene and open that to see a bit more detail. All right, so what we have is the ability to keyframe and remember certain parameters that we change, like the camera angle, the light positions, and some other things. So what we'll do is we'll select the object. We've done that. We'll rotate it to a particular angle, and maybe we'll also change its size. There's a couple of other tools. This one here probably. Yep, it's the scale. So we can change the scale of it. And what we'll do is we'll have it pulsate a little bit, go from here to here, and we'll have it rotate a little bit also. All right, so that's at the very beginning. We need that to be remembered. So we need to enter what we call keyframing mode. And there's a little key icon here. Click that, and it's green, and that means it's now remembering the parameters as you change them. So if this one is this angle and maybe a different size as well, let's say small like this, and then we go to the very end and we give it perhaps the same or a little bit bigger and also a different angle. Let's go like so. It has remembered that. Let's give it like this, and so any position in between, you see it's changing the angle and it's changing the size. It's doing a linear interpolation or some sort of interpolation, and it's we only had to remember one angle and another angle, and those two are enough to have it do something with it for an animation. We can even go somewhere in between and say, well, there's more. Let's give it this one an angle like so, this one an angle like so, and so now we can play this. And you can see that it's going through one and another angle and keep changing the size and so on. All right, so that we want to render into an animation. Let's go to the render mode, the render menu, that is, and find which renderer to use. There's actually two choices, Scanline and OpenGL. So for very large scenes, you may want to use the OpenGL rendering. There's actually some other tools there, some other features that we can explore there later. We also have the anti-aliasing filter. Let's just use everything by default and use the render movie. All right, so rendering the movie means we'll need to say where we want to render that. I have a folder called rendered. There's some stuff I did earlier. Let's do a new one here. This is number 3. And we'll render this to AVI. We see we can also render to BMP or JPEG image sequences. But this one will keep AVI. And let's make it a little bit smaller, 256 by 256. And that will be a perfect size for us to use as a animator brush. Of course, we could make it bigger, but let's try this first. So it's going to be really fast. And we keep it as an image. We don't render the alpha channel or the alpha and the image. We just render the image. All frames or just a range, we can keep it all and go. All right, now it's an AVI file we're about to create, so we need to know how to compress it. And I'm going to use the Lagerif lossless codec here, which is great. It's free and it's absolutely awesome. If you've never done that, you should download it from Sir Lags-a-lot. It's a really great tool. Great contribution to the community of video designers and editors. So here is the modes. We want to render that to RGB alpha. There it is, without alpha, just RGB. And use multi-threading so it's even faster, and OK that. So now you see it rendering. Oh, and it's so fast. All right, that was actually a little bit small. We could probably do bigger, but you know, let's not waste too much time. We're just discovering here. So let's go and switch over now to Dogwaffle, because we are done. We have created our animation of a little blobby thing here, and what we want to do is load it. Let's go load it through the animation menu and load the AVI, and there it is. All right, so we can play that. We can play it a little bit faster if we go to the timeline. No, that's the timeline there, the FPS, frames per second. We can go 30 frames per second. So here it is. Now I may want to make some more changes to that. right? And I may want to load it as a brush as well. So the changes you can make to that is many. One of them is in the timeline menu or on the animation and timeline. What that lets you do is all sorts of filters can be applied across the entire timeline. Like you could make changes in color and shapes, transformations at the image level, each frame of that animation. In order to really do that as a brush though, what we need to do is load it through the brush menu into the animator brush. Right? There's an option there that says AVI to anim brush or to animator brush. So I'm going to load the same one into the animator brush menu. And it's 256 by 256 pixels. Number of frames found 72. Okay, that. And do we want them all? Yes, let's keep them all. It's not too big, and we can go and load them all. So now we actually have that in our brush, and we can paint with it. If I change the step distance here all the way to 0 or 1 or 2, very small, what you'll see is that it's rotating as we are painting with it. But the background is with it too. If I change the image size, let's say to something like this size here, you can see that the brush is contained with the blue box background that we had rendered. All right, so everything is there, and we can stamp it down. It's got this transparency. Let's make it fully opaque. There you go. We can right-click to paint in white. But we don't want that blue background, really. We want the transparency there. So that's where we need to key it. First of all, let's store that, because we might want to get back to that at some point. Store to manage it. So now we're going to the brush menu and key it to the color. So we key color. And by the way, this is a shortcut you can use right here too. In the tool, there's the custom brush selection tool. When you right click, it goes to the color key, right? And here you basically have a turkey baster or a color selector. Just click the color you want to turn transparent, and you're pretty much done. You can adjust a little bit here, the low clip and the high pass, or you can invert it so that you actually have the inside transparent. A little bit hard to see on this small screen, I'm sure. But this is going to be good for a starter. And now as you're painting, it's just drawing this and animating it, but the background is not drawn, it's transparent. So that's perfect. Let's go and store that one. We probably don't need the original one anymore. Let's go delete that. Make sure you save things every once in a while though, right? You can save animated brushes right here, animated brush, save. That will be a .anb animated brush file. And you can also do a variety of other things. I think you can save the sequence, the image sequence that you have there in Targa or some other formats, some of them including the alpha. So the transparency you have on the mask is actually going to be kept and saved there too. So how do we paint with that? Well, the fun thing is that you can paint over a single image, or you can paint over an animation sequence. So let's go and create an animation. Perhaps we'll start with something like this. Here we'll say animation, create, let's do 99 frames. And as we're painting, right now I'm painting on a single frame, right? But what if we paint over the animation? So as I'm painting, it clicks one, and then as I keep drawing and painting with it, it advances to the next frame, and then to the next one, and the next one. So it's actually drawing across the video I have in the background, even though this is just blue backgrounds, and I could change that to, oh, I don't know, let's make it green. Green background, clear all frames. So the entire frame sequence is like so. I can paint over that, but if I use the Alt key, with the Alt key down, it's now actually painting across the animation. And soon enough, I've cycled through all of the frames, and it keeps doing and repeating. And so this is a funky little thing you can do, and soon enough it'll have a lot of these, what shall we call them, doilies, flying around. All right, so we've just created this with the help of Animator to create the brush image sequence, and with the help of Dogwaffle to actually create this image animation.